Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, coming to you live from our offices in Mayfair. First one is the early worm that it's the early bird that catches the worm today. I think that's the saying for this week. The quote for the week is the early bird that catches the worm. So what does that actually mean? I'm going to come on to that in a second. So I hope you all had a really great weekend. It's been quite a hectic weekend on my side. Just been very busy with family and doing lots of chores, and also doing a little bit of fitness work, just going for a long walk, just to try and get the body moving again. Hope everybody's had a good weekend as well. As you may have noticed, the clock has stopped in the back at a particular time. It actually says 20 to 12, so I just got to get that fixed. The battery's gone. So today's quote of the week is the early bird that catches the worm. So what does that mean to you? Be interesting to see, get any comments from anybody out there who's actually like an early starter. So I have to admit, I don't always manage to get in super early, but at least try and get in early, at least a couple of times a week, where I leave at about 5 or 6 in the morning and get in for about 7 or 7:30. Today, managed to get up at 6:30 and get in for try to get in for about 7:45. But unfortunately, trains aren't as quick as one would like, so it took a lot longer today than usual. So hope you too had a good journey, and if you're an early riser. So I think one of the key this particular term, the reason it's quite interesting is I was talking to one guy who's quite a senior guy in Savills and some of these large brokerages. He's got about 15 staff working for him in the bridging department, and I said to him, you seem to be really on the ball with everything, and what's the reason for your success? And he actually gave me this quote. He said, it's the early bird that catches the worm. Because it was quite surprising. It was literally in at 6 o'clock every morning. And when it comes to delivering on cases, it's literally getting things moving at the pace of lightning. So I thought, okay, well, there's a lot to be said for actually this quote. And that's why I thought I'd share that one with you today. So on to today's topic, which is what are the type of services. In fact, let me read it out specifically. Let's have a look. So how do LPA fixed charge or receiver services work? So first of all, I think on Mondays, just to make it clear, we're starting to cover more technical topics now. And it's all around receivership and stopping repossession, in case you're wondering why we're not making it topical. And Friday tends to be a bit more topical around what's happening in the markets, the property market, around interest rates. And we usually have quite a few guests coming in. Vijay Sal hopefully will be joining us next week. He's been quite busy traveling, but he will be flying back in, and we will have him back in soon. So, so basically, the topic that we're addressing today, give me 1 second, is how do LPA and fixed charge or receivership services work? Now, let me start off by giving you a bit of a brief. First of all, what is a fixed charge receiver or an LPA receiver? And I'm just going to go into that now. So a fixed charge receiver or an LPA receiver act under the Law of Property Act 1925, which I'm sure I've covered quite a few times now. So basically, they have the power to sell property and collect rent. So they will have financial control over the day-to-day running of the property to ensure the debt is paid. So that's a very simple way of putting it. So what are the sort of key questions that we asked? So just to sort of reiterate, so who does an LPA receiver act for? So an LPA receiver, although points, I've got some things literally from Google here. An LPA receiver, although appointed by a mortgagee, acts as an agent for the mortgagor. The income of the other rent derived from the property is now paid to the LPA receiver as agent of the mortgagor. And it does get a bit confusing after a while. So we get a lot of questions asked around LPA receivership. So let's just go through the key ones. So one of the key questions we get is, can a receiver be appointed to an individual? So a receiver is a named individual who may take possession of property for its protection or realization. A receiver may be appointed by the court, by a charge holder with a suitable clause in their security to the provisions of a statute, for example, the Law of Property Act 1925. It's a bit confusing, some of the information that's actually out there. It's not really well written. Another sort of question that we get asked is, can an LPA receiver, LPA receivers are liable for council tax? So basically, the LPA receiver does have a statutory duty to pay business rates or council tax due on mortgaged property. So the official receiver should ensure that the receiver fulfills his or her statutory duties when business rates or council tax continue to accrue. So that's quite a good question, actually, because if a tenant is not paying, does that mean that the receiver still pays the council tax from their pocket and deducts it from the sale of the property? Which way around it does it work? That's not quite clear at the moment in terms of what they do. And on the whole, why would a receiver actually put their neck out and pay for things when technically they could be losing out if the property doesn't sell for the right price? So they'll be putting themselves at risk. So some big questions do come to mind in terms of what they would do and what they wouldn't do. So let's have a look at other questions around real estate. So who can appoint the receiver? It's another question that's asked. So there's quite a lot of mixed answers actually on the internet. So I just want to cover some of them to make sure that there's no confusion. So one of the major issues with receivership is that a lot of people get confused between LPA receivers, which is the Law of Property Act 1925, and the other bit where people are made bankrupt and then trustees are appointed or an official receiver is appointed. And that is a different type of receivership from the Law of Property Act 1925 receivers, just to make it very clear. That's a very important point. So I've got like a written statement here on Google about what is the difference. Let's have a quick look. So a liquidator is the person who winds up a company. A receiver is the person who sells particular company assets on behalf of a lender, where a loan is secured in the company's entire business. A receiver manager can be appointed as manager of the business during the receivership. It all sounds very confusing, I know. So to make it clear from my understanding, is the way to draw a line is that if somebody's been made bankrupt and a receiver is appointed, that is called, those receivers are typically trustees in bankruptcy, or something called the official receiver, which is a government body somebody acts for a government body, primarily within the Department of, used to be called Trade and Industry before. I think they changed it to something called BER now, another state department. But within that, they have the rights to appoint a local receiver from the government if it's a small case. If it's a bigger case, over a certain amount of money and it's more complicated, then they appoint something called a trustee in bankruptcy, which is usually an insolvency firm, which goes in and actually then collects all the dues and sells all the assets and manages the whole bankruptcy affair to actually pay off all the people that have lent money to that individual or company. So hopefully all that helps in giving some clarity. I'm going to try and pick some easier questions to make it easier so people understand really all the ways around these type of things. So one of the main questions is that I'm going to try and, because there's lots of questions on the internet, it's going to get quite confusing about what question relates to what type of receivership. So we're going to stick to LPA receiver and focus on that. So what's interesting, the really interesting part of the internet is that there's a lot of stuff that we can do now to show you results of really what can happen when you type in certain keywords. So if you typed in, let's type in some keywords into Google, something like stop repossession, negative equity, LPA receivers help. If you typed in those keywords into Google, what happens is that you get 5,190 results, and nearly all the results at the top are actually our company, believe it or not. So let's do a quick understanding of really what's up here. I'll make this screen a bit bigger so you can see it. So this is quite an interesting exercise. So the first company that comes up is actually a video on Facebook with VJ Sal on it, as you can see. So it says, how can you stop LPA receivers from taking your buy-to-let? So that's quite interesting. So we're actually number one when we type in these keywords on the internet. Then the second video is with Lakhi Singh, the business and property fixer, done 6 days ago. And it's called What Banks Don't Want You to Know About Repossession. That's pretty good, isn't it? We're on twice. Then thirdly, we've got another company called Repossession Expert. Let's have a quick look at who they are, what they do. I think I had a look at this site the other day. So they're a company based in Wales that help people with repossession. That sounds really good. We want as many companies out there to help other people as possible. So that's good. Let's have a look. So third company that comes down, sorry, fourth research item that comes up is another one called Negative Equity Portfolio. So that's come up. And that is actually one of our companies here. It's called Rescue My Properties. That's one of the companies that we have. Just to give you an idea of the market in terms of who's out there. And again, number 5, immediate bank claims comes up, which is one of our brands. And never guess who comes up, look. There's a gentleman who looks a bit like me. It is me, in fact. It's called Lakhi Singh, the property fixer website. Well, immediate bank claims, actually. Immediatebankclaims.co.uk. So basically, this website has been set up to inform people about basically what we do as an organization to help people with receivership. So what we take is number one is we take detailed notes of your situation so that we can decide how to assist in defending you in a repossession or eviction. Number two, we assist you in negotiating directly with your lender, persuade them to cancel the eviction where possible. I would call it repossession, actually. We will assist you to prepare your defense based upon your individual circumstance and help you restructure your finance so that you can afford to maintain your properties. And number four, we'll assist you in providing legal representation at a hearing if the matter goes to court and you are not under threat of losing your property. So quite a lot of information there, lots of videos to sort of set you straight about what services we provide, how we can repair your credit file. Quite a lot of information up there for you. Okay, so what else is on the internet when we type these things in? There's another company called Invest Develop. They're a developing company. They probably help people to come up with solutions to develop their project out if it's gone into negative equity, to try and get it delivered with some funding, I presume. That's what they do. Let's have a quick look. Negative equity. So I think it's quite generic. I think they pretty much a funding company. And number 6, we've got something called Lakhi Singh on LinkedIn. If you click that, then my profile comes up. Lakhi Singh, private investor, advisor to funds, family offices, and then a fair amount of detail about all the services that we provide. And then you've got quite a few other companies. Got Property Tribes, got Mortgage Finance Gazette, you've got England Shelter, Debt Camel, and you also have got number 8 is Lakhi Singh, the property fixer comes up. Okay, well, so we've got a lot of content on the website. We also have a website called Rescue My Properties. Just a bit there on this. That's good. For a second, I thought it might not be on here. There we go. So that was just a quick breakdown of the key companies that are out there in the space for repossession and helping companies repossession. I think further down my Twitter account appears, and also an event that we've done in the past. There we go. Well, there's lots of help out there for people with repossession. We've got quite a lot of something called money saving experts. You've got a company called Step Change, which deals with debt settlement. But in terms of coming up number 1, the first video comes up. Let's have a look, see what is the first thing that comes up. Let's see, this is quite interesting. It's a video, it's an interview actually with me and Raj, actually, Raj Malhotra, as you can see in the background. on how can you stop LPA receivers from taking your buy-to-let portfolio. Okay, that's pretty good, isn't it? That's on our social media. All this work that we're doing on here does actually work. Okay, so going back to the main topic, what are the type of services carried out by LPA receivers and how do they work? So basically, let's say you go into mortgage arrears, you haven't paid your mortgage, you get into a default situation or you get a build-up of arrears on your buy-to-let portfolio. This is the other really critical point that people forget. Receivers normally get appointed only on buy-to-let properties. It's only if you've got maybe a second charge on a commercial loan, then receivers potentially, there's a bit of a grey area there, but receivers could potentially also be appointed in those circumstances as well. So lots of grey lines in terms of how people understand receivership. So first point is, if you own a buy-to-let portfolio, then receivers can be appointed. If you have gone into arrears, then receivers can be appointed. If you're a homeowner, then receivers don't get appointed on your home. Basically, you would actually end up negotiating with the bank, and you would actually end up having to go to, not to court, well, actually you need to go to court, but normally there's a negotiation process with the bank, because if you lost your job or you're having some financial difficulty, they will try and be somewhat helpful. But you've got to be very careful, because if you don't communicate with the bank, you could have a big problem. So there's a lot of toing and froing that goes on with banks when it comes to receivership. So you just have to be very careful in terms of what you're doing. Okay. So what other services we provide in terms of helping you to stop repossession? So what we do as an organization is, first of all, when receivers get appointed, they usually, if you go into arrears default or a huge amount of arrears build up, then the banks will appoint a receiver. So what we typically do is people come to us at this point, just before receivers are about to be appointed. So we would look through everything and see if there's a way around of talking to the right parties and negotiating a way of the properties not being taken over by the receivers. But once the receivers are on your property, it's very difficult to take them off, even though we're experts at doing that. Prevention is better than cure. So the better thing to do is to negotiate a deal or go through all the paperwork and negotiate with the bank a way out, a solution. And that's not that difficult to do. But if you haven't got the expertise or haven't been through the process before, you believe me, you don't want to go through this process and be in a situation where you are putting your properties at risk. So it's better to come and talk to us at this stage. So the second stage is you've gone into arrears, and the bank has literally sent you correspondence now, and they're about to appoint receivers, but they haven't done it yet. So we get lots of clients coming to this second stage, and this is probably one of the scariest stages actually, because they could actually appoint the receivers at any time. So again, you have to present all the information to us, and then we will make a decision as to really how you would go about dealing with this situation and finding a solution to it. Now, it sounds like quite a straightforward process, but it's very high risk if you don't really understand how the banks work and don't really know how to communicate with them. and you don't know how much information to give them about your situation and what to present, you may be doing everything incorrectly and putting yourself in a weaker position. So you would need some organization to potentially look at everything that's gone on and the paperwork and see whether there's a way of actually stopping the receivers coming on. And the other question is, what are receivers? What type of receivers are there? What type of correspondence will you get? So receivership correspondence typically comes, or the bank instructs typically the surveying firm, a law firm, insolvency firm, or an estate agency. It could be any one of those, and one of those type of organizations. But typically, the rights they have are pretty much the same, which they have the rights to collect your rent and also the power to sell your property. So you got to be very careful, regardless of the type of organization that's talking to you, about what you do and how you handle them. So number two is, well, they're all critical points. Number two is a critical point. This is just before you're about to get your locks changed or the receivers coming in to collect rent. So the third point is where a bank has appointed receivers now, and they're knocking on the door, about to change locks, and they started trying to communicate with your tenants, and literally you are in a situation now where the receivers have been appointed, and this is where it can get very technical. And once they've been appointed at this stage, one of the major things that tends to happen is that they will actually knock on your door, will try to change the locks, so they'll try to collect rent. And so a lot of receivers act very differently. And the protocols, the correct protocols and the incorrect protocols, not many people understand. So again, at this point, it's very important, just at the point of instruction, we are involved so we can look at a way of actually stopping or disinstructing the receivers. And at these first 2 or 3 stages, is a lot easier to negotiate or stopping of a receivership than it will be at a later stage. The fourth stage we get is when receivers have already been appointed, locks have been changed, they've started collecting rent, and or they're in a position where they're about to sell your property. So that fourth stage, again, we would need all the information about what's happened, what you need to do. Then we would actually go in and look at the whole situation and see, first of all, whether there's a way of taking back control over the property in terms of rental or a sale. And if it is at all possible, then we would have a way of doing it. We've done it on numerous occasions, and we've had very good success. But it does become a lot more difficult to take control over a property at this stage once receivers have been fully appointed and they're collecting rents and they've changed locks. So just to give you some reassurance, we have been in a situation before where somebody's actually appointed security guards. The receivers actually appointed security guards, and they've also changed the locks, but we've still managed to take out the security, change the locks, and take the control of the property back again. Now, that's not such an easy process. It requires knowledge, experience, and understanding of really what needs to be done, how it needs to be done properly. So, not an easy process, but it's a process that is understood by us, and we have had success in actually carrying out these activities. So as we've got no guests today, I'm actually think I'm going to sort of leave the topic at this point now. And I think that should be enough to actually whet your appetites in terms of what we can do. So if you want to stop repossession, you need help with any type of LPA receiver issue, be it even a home, if you're a homeowner, or if you're going through insolvency, you're about to lose your property through insolvency, or the Law of Property Act 1925 is being applied and LPA receivers are being appointed, we can help in all circumstances of repossession, as we have expertise in all three areas. So do talk to us. We're here to help. This is Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, and we'll be ramping up our marketing efforts to talk to more people as things become a bit tougher in the UK. I think the repossession levels are probably going to start going up because of furloughing finishing, property market is not sustainable, inflation going up, interest rates are likely to go up. So if you need help in stopping repossession, whether you're a homeowner, whether you own a commercial premises, whether you're a buy-to-let portfolio owner, or whether you've got an IVA issue or a bankruptcy issue, insolvency issue, do talk to Lakhi Singh, the property fixer. I'm here to help you. So get in touch. We'll catch up soon.